January. It's my first live stream of this year. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. I hope you all had a great festive season. I hope you had a great new year as well. So this video is going to look at some of the data around the economic forecast for the UK in 2023. There's a couple of reasons why I want to do this video. First and foremost, so we can set the stall out and kind of get a gauge and understanding of what the challenges are ahead of us this year. I think it's better for us to kind of know that it's going to be a little bit difficult and see the severity of the forecast. But also, as always, I will try at least to share maybe 3 tips with you that I think are important just to help you prepare and maybe get yourself a little bit of a buffer. Numbers are not good. Let's be completely honest. But yeah, we'll go through them in a moment. Before I actually get started, though, I am rubbish at this, and it is one of my New Year's things to make sure that I do this more often. So if you are not following me on Instagram right now, please, by all means, go follow me on Instagram. It's Conversation of Money, and also, please help this video reach other people who might find it useful. You can do that by smashing the like button. And if you're not subscribed already, so if you're watching this either live with me right now or you're watching this on a replay and you don't currently subscribe to the channel, this is the kind of stuff that I talk about here. It's all about being as helpful as possible. So please consider subscribing as well. All right, now that is out of the way, let me just hello, Carmen, how you doing? I'm joining you for the goal settings. That's good, Carmen. Everyone who is booked for the event is going to get an email in the next week and a half, with maybe just some preliminary thoughts that I would like everyone to think about before we actually meet on the 24th. Goal setting is really important for me. And over the past 2 years, setting goals has been fundamental to the progress that I've been able to make. And it may sound quite nonchalant, but I believe that it's definitely kept me accountable to myself, and it's helped me aim for something and take the necessary steps to get there. So Carmen, I look forward to seeing you there. You'll get an email in a week and a half, or about a week's time, actually. You'll get an email with some preliminary thoughts, but it's going to be as interactive and as challenging as possible. But let's get into it. Right. Okay. So Naeem's on here as well. Welcome. All right. So I'm just going to share my screen with you because I was looking at some of the data. I will link this after the live is concluded. You can go and have a look at all of this yourself. Now, I'm quite mindful that you may not necessarily understand what each of these mean, but try and explain as much as I can and break down what all of these things basically mean. So let's start with there are 7 categories I want to cover. The first one is going to be the currency. So the currency is the pound. So if you recall, back on in September, I think it was the 21st or the 23rd or so. Actually, when was it? I think it was. Where was it? It was the 23rd of September. We had the mini budget. So Kwasi Kwarteng came out and basically gave his growth plan. And the side effect, the negative side effect of that budget was effectively the fact that the pound started to tank, right? So what we're seeing here is the forecast for the currency, the pound. Now, this is where the pound is right now, as I'm making this video, £1.21 to the dollar. So this is versus the dollar. And these are the 2023 Q1, 2, 3, and 4 forecasts. So what we're seeing here is that by Q4 2023, they are projecting or forecasting that the pound is going to fall in relation to the dollar, which means that essentially, if you're traveling, you're not going to get as much for your money as you would normally do. So that's the currency that is versus the dollar. Now, more specifically for this channel, because obviously we talk about the markets here, this is looking at the FTSE 100. So the UK stock market tracking the 100 most valuable, most successful companies in the UK. So currently at the moment, the FTSE at the minute is at 7451. It is predicting by Q4 2023 that we're going to see the stock market drop to 6671. So that is about a 10.5% fall in the FTSE 100. Now, many people who are obviously investing, who may be either investing for themselves or they may be investing with, I don't know, a Wealthify or a Money Farm or someone like that, you're probably going to hold money in the FTSE 100. And I was looking at this a little bit earlier on. It's worthwhile just clicking into this because, if you look at the FTSE 100, I mean, this is back in October the 12th last year, the FTSE was at 6810. And currently at the moment, it's at what, 7424 roughly, right? So we saw growth over that period of time. And typically, I think that when we start talking about the FTSE 100 and the markets, many people will say, well, actually, the UK is not really worth investing in because, let's face it, we do have issues with Brexit still, and there are some very acute productivity challenges that we also face as well. We'll come to a little bit of that when we start talking about GDP. But if you are investing, I think it's really important just to acknowledge that you have a portfolio that is likely going to be diversified. Let me just come back full screen so that you guys can see me properly whilst I explain this. You likely have a portfolio which is diversified globally. Now, one of the areas where you will invest will be the UK, the US being the biggest market, clearly, right? Is it worthwhile still investing in the UK? For diversification purposes, yes, because ultimately, where else are you going to go? You're going to put all of your money in the US. The US itself has these challenges, and I might do a separate video of these where we talk about the outlook for the US specifically, being the largest market in the world. But from an investment point of view, you probably still want to have a little bit of UK in there, and you will have UK in there if you are investing with a Wealthify or Money Farm or someone like that. You're going to have the UK in there because the idea is to spread your investment risk across different geographic areas across the globe. So the fact that we're seeing this forecast, and this is representing a 10.5% drop by Q4 2023, yes, many people will look at this and think, okay, do I swerve this? But ultimately, you need to think about it not just from the point of view of money invested. It's also about diversification as well. Within this, many people will say that actually that presents an opportunity for you to invest into the market. And this isn't saying that you should go and do that simply, but if you do get to Q4 2020 and you're seeing the FTSE at 6671, well, obviously forecasts are just forecasts. It's guessing at the moment. It may not come to pass, but that in itself could potentially signal an investment opportunity, albeit we don't know what the forecast for 2024 is going to be just yet. So that's the stock market. That's the FTSE 100 here in the UK. The next I'm going to talk about the UK government bond. This is really important. So I made a couple of videos around about the time of the mini budget where we spoke about the fact that the UK government bond yields had increased and that was impacting the value of the pound. Now, if you remember what we talked about there was when you, let me just to give you an illustration of this. When you start looking at bond yields, so this is on September the 20th. This is 4 days the mini budget. We saw bond yields go up to this point 4.46%. Now, when this isn't like the stock market, when you see bond yields like this increase in value, it means that it costs the government more money to raise cash to use for whatever purposes they will use it. You always want to see this curve down here or as low as possible. But we're seeing in the forecast here is saying that the 10-year government bond in the UK currently is at 3.67. So in other words, it's costing the government less money to raise funds for investment for use. What they're saying is by Q4 2023, we're going to see that increase to 4.52%. That's quite a big jump. That's almost a full 1% jump in the government yield. Now, you could say that maybe this is tied to the fact that we're going to see the pound fall against the dollar. Yes, there will be some correlation there, but I think this is worthy of note because when you click back into this, essentially what we're seeing right now is we're going to be returning. Let's come up here. We're going to be returning to these kind of levels again by the end of Q4 2023. And that's going to be really interesting to see in regards to how it correlates to what happens with the pound and also potentially what happens with things like our inflation rate, which I'm going to come to in a moment. In terms of GDP, so GDP is essentially how much we make as a country, goods, services, what we actually make. Well, at the moment, we're at 0.3%, minus 0.3%. By the end of Q4 2023, we're looking at minus 2%. And this is the big, big indicator here. It's basically saying that the economy is going to shrink by quite a bit. And I might try and see how we can actually compare against other companies across the G7 and across the world. But we are one of the companies that has suffered the most in terms of really struggling with our GDP and productivity. Inflation, let's talk about this. So inflation at the moment, 10.7%. I guess from a financial point of view, a really good indicator this last month, because for pretty much all of last year, 2022, I almost said this year then, we saw inflation increase consistently. It was the first time we saw inflation actually fall in value. And the Bank of England were brave enough to increase interest rates just to give it that little bit of a push to ensure that it comes down even further. We will see what happens. But this is the inflation forecast for 2023. Q1, 10.9. So it's rumored to go up a little bit. Q2, 9%. Q3, 6%. Q4, 5.4%. Now, it is worth noting that the target for inflation by the Bank of England and the Fed in the US, although it is a US entity, is 2%. This is telling us that we're still going to see a big increase in prices through Q4, although it will be less than what we're seeing currently right now. And this is going to be the big one, because everything that we've seen thus far, the interventions by the Bank of England with interest rates hasn't really worked. Hasn't really worked, to be completely honest. We've seen a little bit of a reduction this last month and a half or so. I'm hoping that this basically continues. But inflation really is the biggest challenge that we're going to face through 2023. I do want to show you something else, which I think is really important in the labor stats, and this is the unemployment rate. Now, the unemployment rate currently is at 3.7% right now. It is predicted to go up to 5% by Q4 2023, which means we're going to see more people out of jobs. Now, in terms of how this translates, you will remember that I did a video where I spoke about the fact that in the last budget by Jeremy Hunt, there was a clause in there around a mortgage bailout for people who are either in benefits, in receipt of benefits, to help with mortgage payments if they struggle. Now, it is worthwhile just noting, actually, let's have a look at this. Q1, we're expected to see unemployment rise by about 0.5%. It's going to go up again in Q2, 4.5%. Again in Q3, culminating or getting to the peak at 5% in Q4. Now, the reason why there was a lot of chatter around the fact that there was a mortgage bailout in the last budget that wasn't really announced, because I did a segment on Channel 4 on Steph's Pack Lunch around this, and it wasn't anywhere on the radar at all. It was buried on page 59 or so of the actual budget. Now, there are speculations as to why they've done that to support the housing market. We're already seeing that house prices have fallen quite significantly. And this really does beg the question of what's going to happen with mortgage defaults, so on and so forth, and the impact that has on the property market. We're already seeing less mortgage applications, as people are kind of just biding their time, trying to figure out what it is that they should be doing. So I think the unemployment number reaching 5% by Q4, I hope it doesn't get as bad as that. But I think ultimately, what this is signaling is there is going to be a significant contraction of the economy. And typically when you see unemployment numbers rise, it is because the economy essentially contracts. So look, what are the things that I think are important for us to remember right now? Well, the first thing that I think is really important to remember, in terms of if I'm going to give you any useful tips, income is king right now. So where you are able to conserve income, preferably, if you can, increase your income. That is what you need to do. I did a little bit of Vox Pops during the summer last year. and I asked people in London, and I wanted to go to different places, just didn't have the time to do that, what they've done about coping with the cost of living crisis. And there were a number of people that I spoke to were like, well, actually, you know what? I shopped around for a different role. You have to be in particular sectors, particular professions in order to be able to do that, to get yourself a pay rise. But income is key right now, and it may mean that it might be starting a side hustle or doing something online, or trying to develop something that can give you additional money. It might be walking the dogs, it might be being a photographer, I don't know, flying a drone. But income is key right now. It is really, really important that you're able to build yourself some kind of financial buffer, because we're going to feel the pinch through this year as well. The second thing that I would probably say is this: look, education is everything, right? And the important thing here is that you're able to make an informed decision that is right for you. There are lots of voices on social media. Obviously, I am one of them, but it is absolutely crucial that you are able to assimilate information, take information on board, and interpret what that means for you. The day and age of following what people say blindly on social media, I hope, is over. We should never get back to that point, particularly when it comes to investing. So, education is really, really important. I have obviously the podcast, I have this channel, I've got Instagram where I will take questions from people. So, again, if you're not following me on Instagram, by all means, follow me on Instagram, leave comments in the comment section. I try to get back to every single comment. But if you need answers to a question that you're confused about, you can always reach out to me here. And the last one that I guess I think is really important just to bear in mind is, look, let's keep a level head. There's been a lot of hyperbole across the last 2 years around investing. I think when we talk about investing specifically, there'll be a lot of people who are invested right now who perhaps didn't fully understand what was going on, because there were so many accounts talking about buying Palantir and all these other companies that you may have followed the crowd. Keeping a level head is really, really important right now. And just remember, look, it is going to be tough, but we're going to be fine. You are going to be fine. It just means that you've got to make some adjustments here and there. But there we go. That's the video for this evening. I hope you found this really, really useful. And thank you so much for everyone who's actually in the comments right here. But again, if you have not smashed the like button just yet, it means that when this live actually finishes, you will get to, well, YouTube should push it out to other people who might also benefit from this. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll be doing more videos throughout the week, so you'll be seeing subtle changes across the channel over the next week, week and a half as we pivot, as explained in my last live. But thank you so much, guys. Have a good evening. Catch you later.